So I got a book a while back. It's called Cabinet Making: The Professional Approach. It was written by Alan Peters originally in 1984. It's been reprinted a couple times. But there's one part in this that has always stuck out to me, and I want to read it to you right now, okay? It is here that we face the real problem, namely making money. Although large sections of the population do now know about and admire good work and would like to possess it, they either honestly cannot or do not wish to pay for the hours that quality and individual work demands. We still live in a society that generally does not reward skill in the same way that it rewards enterprise, business acumen, or academic achievement. It is a fact that most of us accept and learn to live with, but it does mean that most workshops producing anything of real value operate on a financial knife edge with little room for error or miscalculation. End quote. Boy, if that ain't the truth. So what do we do about that? Well, in my mind, the best way is to educate people about woodworking, the skills required to make quality furniture, and just how long it takes, so that maybe we can turn people back to buying furniture that will last 100 years rather than something that will fall apart in 6 months. How do we do that? I don't know. On my end, it's just about making more videos and showing you what you can do with hand tools and the beautiful stuff you can make. So, to that end, let's show you something today. So one of the things that makes cabinets and furniture look so good is molding. These days with electric routers, you can go around all 4 edges, you got no problem, and all of a sudden you have a perfect piece with perfect molding on all sides. It looks great. But with hand tools, planes in particular, you can really only go along the grain if you're going to do moldings. Going across the grain doesn't work. Now I know I think Underhill put out a video on PBS a very, very long time ago about doing end grain moldings. It's very laborious. If I remember correctly, I think he used a rabbiting plane to go down in steps, and then he used the molding plane to very carefully make the molding. However, I have a different approach, and I want to show you that today. So we're going to start with making a molding on one side of this board. So I have a piece of pine here in the bench dogs. I have my Stanley 55 set up to do moldings. I did a whole video on how to set up and adjust the Stanley 55. I'll put a link to that up in the corner, so check that out because I'm not going to go into that here. So make sure you have the board going the right way grain-wise, and take very, very light cuts. And first cut your molding off on one side. This needs to be out a little bit further. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now what we have to do is cut that off. And what I mean by that is, since this is a test board and I'm showing you the technique, we're going to cut this off so that we can use this molding. Obviously you wouldn't do that on a piece that you were making. You'd have a separate piece that you'd make your moldings on first. So we're going to cut this off. Obviously you can rip it with a handsaw, or you can use a bandsaw, which I'm going to do right now, just to save time, because this is more about the technique rather than how to cut and rip a board. Okay, so we have our molding cut. It's looking good. Now we're going to go back, use the same board, and do the same thing, put another molding on this side. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you take your molding and you want to lay it on the edge like this. Line it up, make sure it's flush with the edge, and then draw a line from the molding on this board to the end. Okay. So the next step is to take a saw and to cut down right there until the molding. This is a nice little jig that I made so that I can cut long boards in this shoulder vise. Otherwise you have to tilt it, which isn't a problem, but it can make cutting straight kind of difficult sometimes. That's about as far as my tenon saw is going to take me. So I'm going to switch over to a Japanese saw. Of which I have many, and hope that it fits in the kerf, which it does. Okay. Okay. And that's exactly where I want it to end. So now I'm going to flip it over and just make my 45-degree line right there so that I know where to cut it. Now making corner cuts like this can be kind of daunting because there isn't much to keep your saw on, but that's where your thumb comes into play. Just put your thumb right there and make sure that the saw is right up tight against it, and just start it real nice and easy until it starts to bite into the wood. I'm using a dovetail saw here, so that it's got a thinner tooth count. More teeth makes it a little more smoother on these corners. There we go. We're going to take the molding we made before and make a miter cut on one side. So we have our piece of molding, we mitered it, we shortened it up so that it fits this board, and then we're going to put that right together and glue it up. And that's going to be your molding. Now, a couple things to look out for. When you're making your molding, make sure that you go to the same depth at all times. Meaning on the plane, make sure you set that depth gauge so that the molding comes out the same. If you look at these two pieces, let me get the other piece here. See, if you look at these, the molding that I made first isn't as deep because I didn't use the depth gauge and I didn't go to the same depth. So consequently, on our miter, when we put that on here, it doesn't exactly line up. Let me get that closer. See, that doesn't quite line up. But good enough for government work, right? No, just kidding. And also, the thing about this technique is that there really isn't a good way to make this shorter. See, if I could make this shorter with a plane, then this would fit up okay, but again, the molding still isn't as deep as this side, so it's never going to look perfect anyway. This is about the best we're going to get. So once you've glued this up, just take some sandpaper, and if you need to, blend the molding in on the end. As I mentioned earlier, the original piece of molding that I made right here isn't as deep as the molding on the end, so it doesn't fit exactly, doesn't line up exactly in the corner here. But hey, for the purpose of this video, I think it came out pretty good. And that's that. So that's how I make end grain molding. As you can see, it looks pretty good. It almost looks like a panel door if you look from really far away. No, just kidding. It came out pretty good. This technique I'm going to use on a drop table writing desk that I'll be making next year. The top of it, the part that folds down, is going to have molding on all three sides. You can do the same technique if you want to do all four sides, but you got to be really careful with your miter cuts in the corner because there's really no going back from that. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was useful for some people, and thanks for watching.